Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Realm. It's our Monday podcast where we take a bigger dive into a single topic. I'm Gina.
I'm Rich, and you guys are going to be impressed today.
Oh, why is that? Oh, they are. I thought you were talking
they
about
are going to be impressed. I
Yeah,
think
they are.
I'm really looking forward to this. So,
And who else do we have with us today?
I'm Kez. I'm just here to make jokes
and drink wine.
and drink wine. Where's my beer engineer? Where's my beer engineer?
Yeah, she's upstairs buying something.
Probably. According to you,
just
yes.
Before we started recording, we were talking about people that just like walk past things and they want it and they just buy it. And Rich kind of threw his wife
under the bus.
Yeah. Well.
So today we have for you, this episode is about Edinburgh Manor, which is a haunted location that is currently investigated by many people throughout the United States, maybe the world. I don't know, but I know it's a very popular place. And so Kez and I actually had the opportunity to go to Edinburgh Manor back in 2017. So we're going to basically kind of tell you about Edinburgh Manor, tell you our experience about it. And we have some evidence that we're going to share with you that I think you guys are going to love. Honestly, it's pretty, like Rich said, it's exciting. So
I love it even more now.
Let's get to it.
All right,
so just to start off, sources for this episode include the Edinburgh Manor website. Paranormalmilwaukee.com had written an article about Edinburgh Manor, and then our own 2.5-hour recording during the tour and our overall 3-hour experience while we were at Edinburgh Manor in August of 2017. So those are our resources for this episode. So like we said, Edinburgh Manor is in, it's near Monticello, Iowa. So it's a county location. And Kez and I got to go to that when we were on our RV trip. For those of you that don't know, Kez and I walked away from our careers, bought an RV. Well, we bought the RV first. Then we walked away from our careers and we toured the grand old US of A for almost a year. And it was great. And so one of the first stops we made was to Edinburgh Manor in Iowa. Kez and Rich are still part of Southeast Wisconsin Paranormal Investigation Team. Shout out to them. And I was on the Paranormal Investigation Team. I think Rich and I both started around at the same time, around 11 years ago. Recently, I took a step back just so I could focus on some other things. But in 2017, when Kez and I went on our road trip, we kind of took a little step back or time out from the team. But what we did was, if you remember, Rich, we offered to share our adventures with the team and basically kind of dubbed ourselves traveling investigators of sorts. So what we would do is we'd go to different locations and then we'd send our audio, video, and photographic evidence and our story over to the team so that it could get posted to the website and just kind of put in the case files. So this was one of those that we went to. We had such a blast sharing it with the team members and just having multiple platforms to share our adventures. At the time, Kez was blogging on travelingproud.com. And so we posted our stuff there. And then we had the paranormal team. And then, of course, our own Twitter and all of that stuff. So anyway, on to the story. So Edinburgh Manor is this very large, grand building. It's huge. It's red brick. It's like a mansion. So when you think of a manor, you think of like something very grand and big. You cannot over imagine this place. I promise you, because this place is huge and it's on a lot of property. So when we went on the tour, well, first of all, do you know anything about it, Rich? Other than what we had sent?
Just the stuff I'm looking at, but when it was built and then it was rebuilt as the manor. It originally wasn't the manor.
Correct.
What struck me as odd is that it was operating until 2010.
Yes. Oh,
that's what when I was reading, I was like, that struck me as the most thing that stood out in my head. I was like, that's very recent. I mean, 2010 for it to still be operating. because we've gone to places before where, in the 90s or whatever, for our schoolhouse comes to mind, I think that actually was like 2005 or something.
Yeah.
I think was when that was the last. So, I mean, that was probably the most recent one I can think about, 2010. And looking at the pictures of the building and stuff like that.
It's pretty incredible.
It's pretty remarkable, actually. To think about, and some of the pictures that I've seen online looking inside the building. It's someplace I'd like to go.
Pictures. Yeah.
It's someplace I'd like to get to go to. Where in comparison to going to Farrar, because that's where I would have to compare it to, because I've been there. Is it like on the way? Is it totally different part of the state?
Let me look that up really quick.
Something tells me this is on the way to it, and it is easy to get to, I think.
So it's 2 hours and 8 minutes. And actually, yes. So it is before Farrar. So it would actually be on the way. Edinburgh Manor is just south of Monticello and it's east of Cedar Rapids. So slightly northeast of Cedar Rapids. So it's about 2 hours to Farrar Schoolhouse. So it is on the way. So I would think it's not as bad of a trip as even driving to Farrar. So it's doable. We should probably do it sometime.
Yeah, that's one place I would like to go. I mean, everybody has their lists of things they'd like to do, but especially knowing that you guys were there.
Yeah.
So I think that in my mind, the way things are now, to go someplace you've never been before, I think it's a toss up. You never know what you're going to get. Yeah. You hope you're going to get something. This one,
I'm almost guaranteed anybody that goes there is going to get something.
Yeah. So I mean, that just makes me want to go there even more, because you guys were there and you guys had experiences and you guys
a lot.
You could say for sure that these things happen. So that really just amps it up for me. Like, man, I want to go there because I want to experience that stuff.
Right. And until I dug into the evidence that we collected, I didn't realize how much we actually got when we were there.
Okay. So that's a question. Myself. Did you think while you were there that you were getting all that stuff? You just kind of alluded to that. You didn't realize it, but did you think
figured that we were going to get something because of the creep factor? So, well, let me give a little history. And then we'll go into that because I'm so excited about the evidence. I don't want to spoil it. Okay. So, Edinburgh Manor was originally assigned as like a court property in the area in Iowa. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure you read that.
Yep.
So at some point in that time, though, the county lines changed. And so then the property was kind of up in the air. So it was supposed to be like, courthouses and so forth. So it instead got turned into a county poor farm that opened in 1840. So back in the 1800s, there were poor farms, and it was basically a social program for homeless and indigent people. And actually, I didn't know this, but during that time period, if you were like homeless or indigent, it was considered illegal. You basically, for them to solve it, they would arrest you. And then you were put in these poor farms. And so you put in this facility. And though you were arrested, you weren't necessarily imprisoned. So like there were no locks, cell doors or, locked windows or anything like that. You could basically leave at any point, but most people didn't have anywhere to go. So what you have to imagine is like, this place is literally in the middle of nowhere. So when we were there, he was basically saying like the closest Walmart was like 8 miles away. So if you think about that walking, back in that time, especially when they didn't have like the roadways that we have now, you're walking on gravel or through weeds or whatever. So there really wasn't a whole lot of places for them to go. So people would stay in the standard stay, like it was expected that these people would leave. So their standard stay was like between 3 and 6 months, just basically to use that time to kind of like time to communicate back to their relatives to see if they, to get back on their feet or figure out where they're going to keep moving west. Because during that time, a lot of people were moving, further and further west. So most people, like I said, stayed there between 3 and 6 months, though there were a small portion of people that stayed longer because they really had nowhere to go. So it was a working farm. So there were farming, there were animals, lots of farming tasks. They had to take care of the animals. There was agriculture. So there was crops that they had to take care of and farm. There was house chores, ground chores, those kinds of things. So the farms were self-sustaining, and basically all the food went to feed the people that were there. And then if there was like anything left over for the food, if there were any extras, they would sell it and use the proceeds to basically help run the place. So some poor farm locations though had extra space, and I'm sure Kez, you remember this. Basically, they would use the extra space and they would take in persons that were classified as like incurably insane. And they even had people with severe disabilities that at the time medicine and others like obviously didn't understand. So the farms would basically take in these classes of people, and there was no segregation between the two. So like they were intermingled with each other, sharing rooms, common spaces, all that.
It was like a poor farm and an asylum.
All
hybrid.
in one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the people that were deemed insane were typically there until death. Like, they basically just lived there until they died because there was just nowhere else for them to go. And to deepen the story a little bit, this was so weird when we heard about this. So there were even some single parent families that would end up at the poor farm. Because back in those times, like when you lost your spouse, it was, what are you going to do? Like, unless you came from money, had money, or, had people to help you, you had nowhere to go and you had to feed your kids. So these families would even go there for like short periods of time to kind of recoup till they could figure out, what their next step was. Some poor farms even had elderly people living in them, like families who would abandon them that didn't want to take care of their elderly family members. So there was just like a whole mixture of people inside of these poor farms. Not all, but specifically this one at Edinburgh. So that for sure had all of these. So, and if you think about it, back in that time, not much was understood about mental health or psychiatric disorders. And there wasn't much of an understanding of like, the socioeconomic things like preventing homelessness or supporting low-income families. There weren't programs for that. So the solution was basically just to put all these people together, make sure they at least had food and a roof over their head. Even though we know life is a little bit more complex than that. So we had our tour guide there, and he was amazing. He was one of the owners. So him and his wife, Cindy, had owned it. And he actually, like, if you look into different articles, his name is not listed anywhere. So I'm not going to use his name in this episode because it seems that every article I've read about Edinburgh Manor just lists Cindy and her husband. So just for those purposes, I will just refer to him as the tour guide or the owner. So, but anyway, he was awesome. Kez, do you remember him?
Yeah, I remember him. He was a very cool guy. He was very excited about the property. Yeah. And he knew a lot, and he was equally excited about the history as he was about the paranormal stuff, which I thought was important. It wasn't all like, yeah, this place is haunted and that's it. That's all it's got going for him. Like, whole vibe, whole picture. Very kind person. Just, yeah.
Yep.
He was very excited. And I think we even asked him.
Yep. I
think we even asked him before we started if like we could record, and take pictures and everything. And he was like, yeah, absolutely. It's like, if you wouldn't mind, send us the stuff if, you guys capture anything. It was really cool.
That's nice.
Yeah. Yeah. He was an amazing guy. Like he was so good with the tour too. So like, aside from like being enthusiastic about all aspects of it, he was an excellent tour guide. Like,
do they live on the property or
I'm sorry?
Do they live on the property, the owners? Do they?
I don't believe so. I can't remember. Kez, do you remember?
No, I don't. I want to say that they don't, because I remember rolling up in the RV and everybody was parked and kind of waiting for them to get there.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I don't think he lived there. But it was really great because it just started with him having a conversation with the group. Like, he made sure everybody was there before he started. And then he asked, like, had anybody been there before? He also asked if there was anybody there from a paranormal team or if anybody was a paranormal investigator. He also asked if there was anyone there that was a sensitive or and then he even said, does everyone know what I mean by a sensitive?
What was the
Hey, I got a
breakdown?
question.
What was the breakdown of the group? Was there a fair amount of paranormal investigators or sensitives, or was it just people there, like Kez alluded to, for the history of it, or were they all there for a ghost thing? I mean, how did that break down?
I think that as far as actual investigators, I think there was a couple people that were like, "Oh yeah, we kind of do it on our own, or we enjoy it." They weren't like part of a team or anything like that. I think
They were
Gina and I,
staying the night there, right? Because there was a group that was there that identified themselves as investigators that said that they were also staying the night.
I don't remember that.
Oh,
But I did have a question for you because I feel like we've been on so many investigations, especially in abandoned and haunted, obviously
yeah,
haunted,
we have
but abandoned buildings that they kind of all like
blend
roll
together.
And so I'm thinking of like a boiler room.
Yes, there was a
Was
boiler
that
room.
here or was that
Yes.
Farrar?
Yes, there's a
Both.
boiler room.
Farrar
There
has a
was
boiler
both,
room as
yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's your question about it?
I'm trying to think because we got photographs.
Then it's not Farrar.
Okay. Yeah, no. Then it had to have been either this place, Gina, where the broken plates. Do you remember
Yes,
that?
that's Edinburgh.
That's Edinburgh.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
All right. Now
I'm
I'm on
gonna
the same
get into
page.
that.
Like I said, it's all kind of mushing together. So okay.
Yeah. And yeah, so that I'm glad you asked, because we have been to so many places. And to answer your question, Rich, I feel like it was just a really good mix in the crowd. There were people that were there just because they're passing through. They purposely took that extra time out of their schedule going through that area to go for this 2.5-hour tour.
How big of a group was it?
I think there was probably a dozen of us, if maybe more. I don't know, but I feel like maybe a dozen. And I do know that there was a couple people in the group that were spending the night that night. So I know because they do the overnight investigations as well.
But you guys weren't staying the night. You guys
No,
were
we were just we were just passing through. But he'd even asked, like, he was kind enough to be like, okay, does everybody know what I mean when I ask who a sensitive is? And then he asked if there were any psychics or mediums in the group. And he even joked, he was like, not that anybody wants to admit it. After almost every investigation, I have someone that comes up to me and says, I'm a psychic or medium, and this is what I experienced. He's like, it happens every time because most people don't want to divulge it. And then they tell him what he encountered. He also asked, like, people who believed in ghosts, and he was just so kind in his presentation, and also just when he asked those questions, and never ever like used like a mocking tone when referring to anything paranormal. So it was very nice. It was refreshing. He's very professional. And then that's when he went into to say, like, he was a very science and math based person. To him, science, physics, explains everything. So he's always had kind of like tousled a little bit with the world of paranormal because it couldn't be explained. Mm-hmm. However, he said after the involvement with his building, and then hearing everyone else's stories, seeing some of the evidence, and then having some of his own experiences, he said, like, these experiences have only ever happened to me on this property. And these are things I can't explain. Like, nowhere else in my life has this ever happened. It's not like I've been anywhere else and felt like, oh, there's a ghost here, kind of, that's the type of, I guess, point that he was trying to convey. But this building made him a believer. So in this, he's like, I'm a science guy, and this building made me a believer. So, going on with the tour, some of the history that I had given, he pointed out that the rooms, that had, like, so there were many rooms there that people had shared. And that, back in the day, because they had people there that were, had disabilities or who had, mental health issues. And he said, like, the standard of care for mentally ill persons is not what it is today, obviously. And he said that most of the care was done by, like, restraint or force, and which sometimes ended in the death of the individual. And so there were more than 80 documented deaths during that time of the poor farm, but nobody knows what happened to the bodies or where they were buried or disposed of. No joke. So
I read that there's a cemetery on the property. Is there still a cemetery on the property?
Across from the property, actually.
Okay.
He said when he bought the building, that there were like detailed ledgers in the basement with like, patient information, not from like the modern days. We'll get into how it operated in the modern days. But yeah, you had mentioned that it operated all the way up to 2010. Those files weren't there, but they found files in the basement that were from like 1850 to 1930. And the state actually ended up taking control. It was either state or the county took those and archived them because it was, records that now would be protected under, medical, even though it wasn't a medical facility, those would be protected under HIPAA. So, but he said they were like really detailed ledgers that like literally had everything written in them. And so you were talking about the cemetery. So there's a cemetery across the street from Edinburgh, but none of the known deaths that are recorded have ever been buried there. And actually, the last person to be buried in that cemetery across the street was in 1889. So, like, there was no record of him. He said, like, the ledgers were recorded deaths where they would write down, like, they'd have the name, and then next to it, it was like, body was sent to, and then, like, the name of a town, but it didn't say specifically, like, where it was buried or where it went. And then there were even next to some names where it said buried at county home or buried across the road, but where? None of the names in the cemetery matched anybody that lived there. And there was no other cemetery on the property. Some speculate that they were buried in a nearby cornfield. Of course, there's all kinds of, different things. That, different urban legends probably around that whole place, but for sure, nobody was buried in that cemetery across the street.
Okay.
So the original building operated until from 1910 to 1911, and the poor farm system started to like slowly close down because there was just so many people going to the poor farm. And so the demand was just too great on the system as it was built. So they couldn't sustain it. So the original building itself was tore down. And then in 1911, a new massive building that we see today, which is the Edinburgh Manor of today, was actually built. And it was used as a facility to care for persons with special needs and those that were like severely disabled. And you're right, the facility actually did stay open until 2010. Now, when we went there was so much that was left behind. It just looked like people just completely vanished from there. There were like still hospital type beds. There was still like artwork and pictures hanging on the wall that people had colored. I remember there was a room that had like a paper cross made and it was still like hanging on the wall. There was old calendars still hanging on the walls. There were dishes still in the dining room. There was hospital type equipment everywhere. It was just unbelievable.
Yeah, definitely. Like it was weird that they still had some artwork, some beds. They had that Raggedy Ann doll.
Oh yeah, there was dolls there too. You would have loved it.
Bunch of random
Rich
stuff.
is shaking his head no.
It's always about the dolls.
I think they had said something too around something was about those dolls as well. I don't think we caught anything doll specific, but I think that they had spoken about like the one doll that kind of.
They had a Chucky doll there too.
Of course they did.
But the whole vibe of the place was like the paint was like peeling off the walls and the ceilings, and I mean structurally it seemed pretty sound. Would you agree, Kaz?
Yeah, structurally, yeah, but I mean, there were like, obviously the normal paint peeling. You got the stuff kind of hanging from the wall, the wallpaper that's coming down and whatnot. I mean, it was definitely old. I don't know if they had any intention of restoring it or keeping it. I'm assuming they wanted to keep it as preserved as possible. But yeah, I do remember like the ceiling coming, like folding down as far as like the paper that was on the walls and stuff.
Yeah, and the owner, Cindy and her husband, they actually bought it with the prospect of like they wanted to restore and preserve it. So that was their whole thing. And then all these things started happening. And so, that's how all this kind of basically got started. Now, as with any haunted building, there's always a dark history, right? So there's some dark history there.
Lay it on me.
So there are reports of a couple suicides by male residents. One was what is now a mop closet. But so if you imagine, like, it's a mop closet today, but that was his room back in the day. It was so tiny. He killed himself in that room. Another male suicide in the padded room, which was down in the basement across from the boiler room. So when you go down the steps and you go down this creepy, like, thin hallway, to the left is this cement block room. And that was, I'm sure they had like the pads or whatever. That was the padded room. And then you had to go down like a couple more steps. And that was the big boiler room. So supposedly somebody had committed suicide there. There was also reports of a brutal rape and even repeated events of sexual abuse. And then, of course, we have the missing bodies. So some reports, just by the way the building was built in the basement, that they even believe, like, just looking at the way it was built and drains and so forth that they found in the drawer that didn't seem normal. They believe that there was probably an embalming area in the basement, because in the wintertime, you got to imagine how cold it gets here in the Midwest. We live in Wisconsin, we know. So we know what these brutal Midwest winters are like. So everything just gets frozen solid. Yep. So they can't do anything with the bodies. They're in the middle of nowhere. So they believe that the bodies were, embalmed and then kept in the basement area in the cold until spring came when they could be buried. Now nothing's confirmed on that, but that's just speculation about the history there. So some of the claims that people had was that, they've had people come do work on the property, like, plumbers. And this was even before they owned it. I mean, they had the ability to talk to some of these people, and I'll tell you how that happened in a minute. But they even had a sheriff deputy. And at the time in 2017, when the tour guide was telling us this, he said that the sheriff deputy was still working for that county currently. And that he had responded to a call at that location. And when he went onto the second level into a room, he saw what he called was like a large shadow figure walk across the room and then like come back. And he just he couldn't explain it at all. And fun fact we learned was that facility generated more calls to the police than anything else in the entire county, that particular facility, even after it had shut down. So that's pretty compelling.
Interesting.
The owner has a dog that's his faithful companion. So would, go to the building with him. And he said, his dog, he said, it's very docile and nice, happy-go-lucky dog. But that he's witnessed his dog have things happen where this, how the dogs get the mohawk where all their hair kind of stands up because they're on alert. And I guess this happened to the dog one time when he was spending the night there, because he thought, oh, I'm going to spend the night in this haunted room. Everybody thinks room 200 is the most haunted. So he decided he would spend the night there. And he said he felt like he had gotten grabbed. And then at the same time, his dog was kind of reacting. And I hope I'm not misremembering the story, but it's something along this lines. And the dog was making this unusual growling, barking noise and kind of staring into nowhere, just completely frozen solid, staring at something. But then nothing was there. He would get up and look and nothing was there. Investigators had talked about, other investigators, not just him, had talked about their arms being grabbed. There have been EVPs where they've gone into the building and asked, what did you do to so-and-so that stayed here last week? And the voice was like, I grabbed you, and so they have some of this evidence on their website, actually. So I'll include the link to Edinburgh Manor so people can take a look at that. So there's also been claims of a female apparition dressed in white that's been seen there. Ghost Adventures was actually filmed an episode there. And for those of you who are interested, it's season 11, episode 1 of Ghost Adventures. And in that episode, Zach claimed to have been influenced by an evil entity. And Bill was in the basement in the laundry room area where plates were broken without explanation. So it's like I don't know if they like flew, across the wall and
There's
broke.
my broken plates.
Yes. Because you
And
remember?
they left. Yeah, well, I remember that story very vaguely, but they left those broken plates out.
Yeah.
I remember there being broken plates sitting on. I can't, honestly, I can't remember where they were, if they had left them where they had been thrown or if they were just like sitting on a table, but the broken plates were still there.
Yeah, because there was like the a dining room downstairs in the basement, and there was also a laundry room. And so there was like a wall that separated the two, and they were very large rooms. And so the broken plate actually happened to Bill when he was in the laundry room, which is just on the other side of the dining room, if I'm not mistaken. And now, Kez, I don't know if you remember, like the dining room, it's like the whole basement in of itself just felt like, I don't even know how to describe it. It just felt very heavy and just almost like there were some portions where it just kind of felt like impending doom. I do know there was a lot of mold down there. So that was pretty evident.
I feel like that definitely has to be taken into consideration, because I was really hoping to get something in that little like dinette area, kitchen area, where they obviously were having experiences, but the boiler room, on the other hand, we did capture some stuff. So creepy feelings validated. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, I can't wait to tell you all this evidence that we got, because we had got so much, like looking at it today, we got more than what I even remembered getting. And like, as I was going through the evidence, I was like, oh yeah, that's right. But when we were there, when you're going through the whole place, there was like, they still had the tape on the doorways of the rooms that, the cast of the Ghost Adventures had stayed in. So it was like, Aaron was written on, one of the tapes. We know that was the room Aaron was in, and Zach and all that. So that was really kind of cool to, I guess, to be there after that episode had aired. And
right. And whether or not you think that, obviously these guys are maybe a little dramatic, they're making things for television, but some of the stuff that they do capture is quite interesting.
Yeah.
Regardless of any annoyance that people have with them, because I've definitely heard that before. I enjoy watching it. I think the theatrics is part of the experience, but the evidence still, I think, is valid.
Yeah, for sure. I think they get a lot of good evidence. Now, after that show aired, though, it was like people came crawling out of the woodwork. So like people that used to work there or had family members there, but it was mostly like, older employees. There was even like elderly women that came forward that said they were nurses there, like long back in the day. Because what ended up happening was, just to backtrack a little bit, so I think, like, when did Social Security come out? Like 1935 or something like that. I don't know. Whenever it was formed, like whenever they reformed the government a little bit, that's when poor farms were like completely eradicated at that point. There was a different way to take care of people. More of our modern welfare system kind of came into play. But there were nurses that came and gave their story. And they even said that some of these nurses like divulged that there were cages that were put in the attic that would hold people in it, that like would like forcibly hold people in there for like up to 2 days at a time. So that's a pretty heavy duty claim to make.
Right.
They also had stated that residents would tell them about shadows or seeing other figures or hearing other unexplained noises. And, for them, they had to just basically put it out of their mind. But when they finally saw this episode and was able to see some things get documented and actually happen, they were like, I got to tell my story, which I don't blame them, because then you finally feel like you're not crazy. Right.
Right.
So over the years, different residents that never had communicated with each other were seeing the same thing. So we're talking like, generations of people that are telling that they're seeing the same things. And it's not that they've heard the story before, they didn't talk to somebody else. So I feel like it's more than mere coincidence as far as that goes. There also are claims of shadow people there, like the deputy had reported. There have been photos where there's been faces that show up in the background with no explanation. So I think when you go to their website, you'll be able to see it. There was a paranormal team that was there, and then it was the only 4 of them out there. They'd taken a picture, and through the glass, it looks like somebody is over their shoulder, but they weren't a part of the team, and there was nobody else in the building, as their claims. There's also witnessing like people from the windows, or, just hearing noises, feeling brushed up against, hearing whispers, just story after story after story.
I find it fascinating. I think a lot of the stuff you're saying, I would say I kind of had a feeling on, and doesn't surprise me what you're telling me. I think it's cool that you guys got to experience it firsthand. I'm kind of a little bit jealous that I didn't get to do this yet, but I'm telling you, it's on my list because I'm really looking forward to hearing some of the experiences you guys actually had with the evidence you caught.
I'm gonna hopefully jog Kez's memory just a little bit with some of this stuff. We did capture several cool EVPs, actually more than what I thought. I think like maybe 7 or 8. And we're gonna post all of these EVPs for everyone. But I can tell you this: the first EVP happened within the first 10 seconds of us walking in the door to check in for the tour. And
please mind as well that this was a tour, like an hour and a half, maybe tour.
Right, you weren't there investigating. You weren't there investigating. No. You're just taking a tour.
Absolutely, we turned on a recorder and we were taking pictures for funsies, but we were not sitting around asking questions, doing a tour. No,
we were just there for the cool factor.
And just like the amount of evidence that we captured for just basically hanging out was wild.
Yeah, it was incredible. So do you remember what the first one was that we caught when we walked in the door? I'm just curious if you remember.
Was it the drums or the piano?
The piano. So literally 10 seconds after I turned on the recorder, we're walking in the door, and you just hear we capture a couple chords of a song being played on a piano. Nobody, and I mean nobody, was playing a piano. There was a piano in the front room that we all walked towards to start the tour, to just, for him to do the introduction or whatever. But it was just for decoration. Nobody was around. This is
the EVP. This isn't something you heard.
Correct. So nobody was around it. Nobody was playing it. Nobody else heard it with their own ears because we didn't even discover it until we listened to the recorder. So we turn on the recorder. I'm like, this is Edinburgh Manor, Monticello, Iowa. I gave the date. And then that took a few seconds, and literally a few seconds later you hear dun, dun, dun. And I can't wait for you guys to hear it. So those of you listening to this episode, I promise these are going to get posted. But what I want to tell you is when you listen to them, please listen to them with headphones. The piano music is really easy to hear because it's very clear. So is the drums. But some of the EVPs of voices really need to put in your headphones, and we clearly have everything marked. So you shouldn't be able to miss it because we have it isolated and clearly marked. So we're going to share all that, like I said. So the evidence that we're going to share with you is the exact evidence that we shared with the owners in the days after the investigation, and the evidence breakdown that we sent back to the team as well. So when we sent this over to you guys, and it got posted on the Stupid Facebook or on the website. So it's the exact breakdown. Kez meticulously went through all of the audio. It was 2.5 hours worth. Isolated every single one of those, and we pointed them out. So the evidence we're giving you is the exact same. Nothing's changed, not even the wording. I'm literally copying and pasting everything.
Now, was it piano playing, or these drums you're talking about, were those claims that other people have experienced there? Is that like when you do the tour, and it says, in this area people sometimes hear a piano or any of that stuff? So these weren't claims that were stuff that people normally hear, but you guys, a piano out of nowhere.
I don't remember him saying that, but I cannot remember, Gina, maybe you do, if he said this used to be the piano room.
No, he said it used to be the game room.
The game room. Okay, because
Yes.
I couldn't remember if we sent him the evidence and then he
Yes.
went, yeah, there used to be a piano in that room.
Gotcha.
Well, no,
or
he
if
said
it
that was the game room and people would play in there. Because when we sent him that evidence, he said nope. He said some of the evidence, a good portion of the evidence, because I also gave a side report. You know what I do, that side report. And he actually had not heard some of the EVPs we caught. He had never heard anybody saying that they caught. So he loved when we sent the email to him, he loved it. In fact, they were back in touch with us right away to tell us. And some of the side information that I had given them, they were actually able to look up and verify. You couldn't just Google the information. You literally would have to go and get this information. So that was super cool. Yeah, so to answer your question, no, nothing that we received was any claims that had been given to him before. So he was very appreciative of the evidence that we had sent over. But I just wanted to let everybody know the integrity of this evidence is completely preserved. It's literally in the same, I pulled it from the same email that we had sent it to everybody in. So there's no changes in it. And again, just listen to them with headphones. So one of the things that we got aside from the piano is we also got these drums playing. Like, do you remember that, Kez? Like, you want to describe what they sounded like?
I can't. Was it like was it like a bongo type of thing?
Or was it was like yeah, it was very
faint.
And it went on for a very
but it
long
went on, yeah, that went on for a while. So the piano was like a diddle-diddle-diddle thing, like, it was long, but it was enough to know, okay, that's a piano. But like the drums is like, it went on
8 seconds.
Yeah, it was like forever. And I
was
like, holy cow, I was like, what is going on here?
Yeah, 8 seconds of drumming. It was incredible. We also had a male, like he had a voice that just sounded like, a throaty type of voice that said, "You did what?" And then there was another one that we caught where the tour guide was telling a story. He was, going from room to room and giving the history. And it was almost like the spirit wanted to keep like finishing his sentences for him, because as soon as, so he was saying something like, go into the next, and the word he wanted to say was town, but he kind of like paused, like he couldn't think of the word he wanted to say.
Yeah,
do you remember this,
that.
Kez?
I remember that. That was wild.
Say it.
I don't remember what he said, but I just remember him completing a sentence.
Yeah, so it's like he wanted to say the word town, and he hesitated, and so instead the ghost finished the spirit finished his sentence for him and said town, and so then the tour guide said town right after it. It was that was hilarious to me. And then there was another one where we got a male voice laughing. Nobody else in the group was laughing. Kez did a remarkable job of marking the audio. And what we mean by marking the audio is when you're responsible for carrying around a recorder, if there's any extra noise going on around the recorder, like if somebody sneezes or there's a creak in the floorboard or somebody's breathing heavy or if there's anything going on in the environment, it gets marked at that moment so that whoever's listening to the evidence knows that what else is going on in this picture, so that you can differentiate if it's something paranormal or not.
I'm well trained.
You are well trained. You did a great job on this one. Like, I guess it was like this evidence breakdown was incredible. So I give you kudos, babe. So there was another female voice that completed another sentence where he was talking about where he wanted to say that this lady was walking. And again, he kind of did this pause and she goes, I was walking. And then he said walking after that. So I don't know if like he uses maybe some
and it was
stories.
Like the accent was like, I was walking. It was
weird. It was like almost like a British accent almost.
Yeah.
It was incredible. I mean, all this evidence is going to be available for everybody listening. So I'm excited for you. And I can't wait to get feedback on this. There was another one where a male voice was saying, hey, come back here, almost at the same time as our guide says back here. And then in this same stream, we think that the same voice says in a whisper, come back here now. And amazingly, at that time, Kez was actually leaving the room when this was captured. So it's almost like it was calling Kez to like come back in the room, because Kez was the last one to go out of this room.
Oh, we need to go back so much. Like, just this recapping of this is just driving me wild. Like,
okay, Rich,
hold
how about
down.
a date? Double date.
But I'm down.
I've been pitching it to the team too for next year. I was like, you guys, like, we've got to go.
I think we should. I mean, it's close. It's close enough. It's not that far away that
I may reprise my role on the team for that investigation if you do it as the team. So
yeah, you be guest investigator. Why not?
So yeah, and then like I said, we had the piano playing, the drum, and another thing that was really incredible that we had never heard before in any of the other EVPs or anything that we ever recorded. And now, mind you, aside from being on the team for 11 years, I previously had done paranormal investigation. And so for a better part of like 22 years, I've been involved actively with paranormal and doing investigation and so forth. And in all of those years, and of course, recorders have gotten better. Things have gotten better. Old recorders used to have the tapes in it and everything. So, you had to worry about that, the integrity of the tapes when you keep recording over top of things. So it gets expensive buying new tapes. So now with the digital recorders, it's much better. And in this digital recorder, we caught static 39 times. Like there was some sort of interference that we can't explain.
Like an old radio that wasn't tuning to the right station.
Yes. It was
clearly
in fact, it happened right after the piano playing when we first walked in the door. So it was like we had the piano playing, and then like all of a sudden we got this weird static disturbance, and it happened 39 times. And we have never in all of the investigations ever heard this disturbance before. Now, there was somebody there with an ovulus. And for those of you that don't know what an ovulus is, it's a machine that kind of uses the energy. The thought is that it uses the energy, or let's say the entity or the spirit uses the energy coming from this machine to be able to form words that will either print out on the screen or verbally sound. So it sounds kind of robotic. So we do know that there was an ovulus there, but we only heard it go off like a couple times during this 2.5-hour tour or 2-hour tour, whatever it was. And so I don't know, can an ovulus like interfere with a digital recorder? Like, I don't think so, because we've been on other investigations where we've had an ovulus, right?
I don't know that I've ever heard anything interfere with a voice recorder. The voice recorder is just picking up whatever. I mean, now we've had other instruments interfere with each other, like the walkies interfere with like the REM pods, things like that. But I mean, now when you speak of a recorder, the recorder picks up that stuff, but I've never had anything cause a recorder to go wacky.
It sounds like it's like shorting it out. That's what it sounds like, something shorting out almost. And it would happen at the weirdest times. Sometimes it would happen, and it happened all over the building. So it wasn't like, and we weren't next to the same people all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I know our phones were off. Kez was using a Canon like professional camera, so we weren't using like,
Well, and you can hear, because I had the shutter sound on, so you could hear every time I took a picture too.
And you could hear that in the recording. And so none of that correlated. Even the static didn't correlate with the ovulus when we heard it go off when somebody had it carried. So it was the strangest disturbance. And like I said, it would happen at times when weird things were being talked about as well. So when there were certain claims, or it was almost like it was being activated when he would refer to certain memories or certain things. Right. So that was pretty interesting. There's also some photos. And so this is an excerpt directly out of the email that we sent the owner, and Kez had composed the email and sent this over to him. And this is what Kez had to say. There were also 3 photos of Gina, which are kind of creepy. It's possible the distortions were caused by her moving, but she was moving very slowly, taking everything in at that point. One photo, her face appears distorted. Another photo, her right foot looks almost invisible. The final photo, she has some sort of haze leaving a trail behind her. At that point, she told me she felt like someone was following her, which was why I was snapping the pictures of her. And I remember this specifically because we were in this hallway and I just kept feeling like something was there. So I was moving very slow, very purposeful, taking my time. Like I was literally just like slowly moving and turning around. So it wasn't even like, I don't think the f-stop was even set to like, it was an auto photo. So it wasn't like the f-stop wasn't open.
That's kind of what I wanted to address, is that there's a good, I felt like, okay, after the fact, like, okay, maybe my shutter was just not, sometimes it gets distorted if people are moving and your shutter speed's kind of slow. It's like, maybe my shutter speed wasn't that great, but I didn't change it throughout the day, first of all. So my shutter speed would have been the same. And I took tons of pictures of you and people moving and things of that nature. And right at that same time that this is happening, you're like doing this thing with your hands around your head. You're like, there's just something going on right now. I feel like there's somebody following me around, or there's something. And that's when I turned to take pictures of you specifically, because you had said, I feel like there's somebody like following me right now. There's somebody in front of me. There's something going on. And so that was the time that I got that. So I want to be like, could it be the shutter speed? But again, I did not change the shutter speed throughout the entire time we were in there. And I specifically took photographs of you when you were saying, I feel like there's something around me. So right. It's not like your face was being distorted. It was almost like maybe something was passing in front of you or walking in front of you that was distorting you.
And I'm actually going to pull up these photos and share them on the screen really quickly. So if those that are watching on YouTube are going to be able to see this right away. I don't think there's any way for me to make it bigger, but if you see down here, my leg looks like it's kind of disappeared from the shin all the way down. Now, mind you, I'm just kind of standing there. Are you able to see that at all?
I can see it.
Okay. And then, so there's that picture. And as you can see, we're talking about the wallpaper and everything. And then here is another photo. And this is me.
So if you backtrack to the last photo real quick.
Sure.
Just to see your gait. Okay. So this could be interpreted as, okay, maybe I'm moving my right foot forward, right? I'm taking a step. Mm-hmm. But it almost looks like your back foot, your left foot that's clear, is on its toe.
Yeah, it's like also in motion.
Which would to me would be symbolizing that your front foot's planted and your back foot is the one that's supposed to be in motion. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It could go either way, but you get what I'm saying?
Right. But yeah, it's like, why is only one foot? It's not like I was walking super fast or anything like that. Now, here is the one of me walking through the hallway, and it just looks like something is trailing behind me. And this is, at the same time I had told Kaz, like, I feel like something is following me. So do you see like this weird, it's like, I don't know what all this is, but if you can see, these people are in focus. The doorway's in focus. Everything's in focus. Like, we just don't know. Here's one other one. And this one is creepy. And I don't think I'm going to be able to blow this up enough, but do you see my face, or do I need to blow this up some more somehow?
Please don't blow it up. I can see it from here.
Okay.
That's creepy.
I know.
Is that not completely terrifying? It looks like something is sucking the soul out of her. It
doesn't look like her. It's somebody else's face.
And look at this.
Yeah.
Right. And look at this. My legs, this was taken, I think,
which
right
are
before
in motion.
I had taken the step forward. And this was probably right before the other picture.
I mean, that's just wild for the face only. And I mean, even if she's moving her head or speaking, okay, fine. If she's moving her head and speaking and it's a delay in the camera, then why is her arm and her feet that are supposed to be in motion because she's walking not also distorted?
Right. And like what you can see is that, so for those of you just listening, we just showed like 3 photos where, my leg's partially missing, something trailing behind me. And now on this one, half of my face looks completely distorted, like it's melting. It really just, talk about incredible evidence at some place, or just things that you can't explain. To date, we just haven't had any answers about what could have possibly caused the anomaly in those pictures. But this many years later, here we are with social media and connections and networks that are much stronger than they were even back in 2017. So basically, I just want to invite any professionals that are out there that want to reach out to us. about these photos, we want to hear from you. Look, we would love to either debunk these photos or confirm their mysterious distortions. Honestly, I mean, that's, I don't know. Would you guys agree? Like, I don't mind being proven wrong.
Yeah, either way, yes, I agree. I mean, because I get the whole thing with the photo thing that could be anything. I mean, everybody's gonna say, you're gonna get people that are professional photographers are going to say, "Oh, I see it all the time. It's this," or you're gonna, and you're also gonna get the same people that say, "Yeah, there's something not right about that." So, I'd be curious what the general consensus is as to a polling of who thinks it's this, who thinks it's that type thing. But
yeah, we could probably do that too. And obviously, if there's anybody that knows about photography, get a hold of us. Just be kind, because we're not saying it's one thing or the other. We want to know what it is.
I mean, I've seen pictures like that, and I've taken some with obviously not a nicest camera as Kez used, just my iPhone or whatever, where I've got a picture and you can see someone walking and they're just walking, but then they walk, and then when you do the next picture in a row, it's just a blur like they disappeared, but it's their whole body. It's not just a little piece of their, you know what I mean?
Oh my God.
When you have
that's
there
where
it's just your foot, if that little section of your foot would have to be moving twice as fast as the rest of your body for it to be a blur. And clearly that wasn't the case. I mean, I've never seen a picture where only a part of a person is doing that in a picture. Usually it's the whole thing where
it's all or nothing. Yeah.
It's all or nothing. It's not just a part of it. I mean, I'm sure someone's going to prove me wrong and tell me, no, that does happen, but I've never seen it.
Right. That's a good point.
Makes it weird.
Gina, it kind of reminds me of that picture you took of Nina J. Coors when she was here. We'll have to talk about that sometime.
Oh, Rich,
a little teaser of that.
When we had our visitor from Italy for 3 weeks, they I'm a Reiki master and I teach Reiki, and so I had literally that day had taught a class, and I had 2 students in it, and Nina was one of them who received their Reiki level 1. And so it was the day of attunement, which is always like a really powerful day. And this storm came, and was it the same? That was the same day, right?
Yeah, they were also blowing up fireworks and stuff. So
so there's a lot of fireworks going on. The storm was coming in, but there was a lot of fireworks going on with the neighbors. And she's dancing out in the yard, but not even dancing. She's like, oh no, she wasn't even dancing. She was like standing still with her arms up in the air, and Kez is right next to her, and she is almost completely see-through, and Kez is totally fine. She turns around, comes walking towards me. I'm snapping another picture, and I can literally see the bushes through her. I will text you these pictures were incredible. You literally could see everything behind her. I don't know how that happened. No clue. But yeah, it does kind of remind me.
But again, even if that's a function of the camera, right? Even if that's something that's a camera trick, and that's fair. Cameras can do a lot of weird things. How are the bushes behind her
showing up
clear?
Right.
How are they clear? How are they clear as day that you can see it through her? Even if she's walking, then it should just be all a blur. It should not be a clear bush behind her. I don't know. It's very weird. Very weird.
Yeah.
So, well, that's our presentation on Edinburgh Manor.
Sweet.
Any thoughts, concerns?
Yeah, I want to go. Concerns? No concerns. Thoughts?
We should do the overnight there. Would you do the overnight there?
Of course I would.
Kez?
Oh yeah, of course. Like I said, I can't even say it was an hour and a half. Hour tour, 45-minute tour, and
we caught all that evidence
of not even trying. We're just hanging out, listening to the guy talk.
Right.
I don't know. I can't think of an investigation where we caught that much evidence.
And we've caught
evidence, and we've caught 4 or 5. Oh wow, that's really compelling stuff, really amazing stuff. I'm not downplaying, but we caught what? Even okay, we throw away the pictures. Say the pictures are, say those can be debunked. You can't debunk the EVPs, and we got 8, 10, 12. You know what I mean? 39 interferences at least.
EVPs are my favorite.
So it's just wild to think.
Personally.
Like you're getting, something every other minute. I mean, it's just crazy.
Yeah. It's pretty incredible. So I can't wait to go back. And I hope that the owners continue to keep it open to everybody and do as great a job. I mean, it just sounds like they do a great job, even reading some of the reviews. Just a plug, October 1st of every year, they book their overnights for the following year. So if we want to go overnight, I suggest we book our 2023 trip here when they open on October 1st. What do you guys say?
We could do a live podcast from there.
That would be amazing. That would be amazing. Facebook Live, YouTube Live.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, thanks everybody for joining us. We hope you enjoyed our episode on Edinburgh Manor. If you have any questions or have been there yourself or want to talk about any of the evidence that we have, please feel free to message us on Facebook, or you can email us at connectedrealm@gmail.com. That's connectedrealm@gmail.com.
Thanks for listening. Thank you, Kez, for joining us today. I appreciate that, and for sharing your experience. Like I said earlier, several times, I wish I could have been there.
Yeah, it was pretty incredible. Don't worry, we're gonna go.
We got a lifetime. We got a lifetime.
Yeah, I want to
go. We live like 2 miles away. We can kidnap each other anytime and go on these adventures. So
yeah, we got to go. I think we do
for sure. Well,
I don't want to go to the axe murder house though.
Oh, we went. We didn't go inside.
No.
But we went there.
I don't.
You guys went to that too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is that another episode? Is that going to be another episode?
We didn't capture anything there.
You didn't?
Yeah. No, we didn't stay. We didn't go inside. We just went there, walked around the premises because it was closed.
It's weird because, like you just said, you didn't catch anything while you were there, or whatever the case. Well, you didn't go in. That's what you're saying,
right?
Yeah, it's weird because even like this episode here at Edinburgh, there's people out there that say, no, that's not haunted. We don't. There's nothing going on there. And then you get other people that go and like yourselves that catch everything. And so I think any location at any given time is gonna either give you something or not give you something. And we've experienced that at Farrar as well, where we've had I've been there 3 times. And the first time was just insane amount of activity. The second time was excellent, different types of activity. And the third time was a little more laid back and not as much activity. So, I mean, same location, just different things happen. And that's interesting, and I look forward to hearing more of your guys' adventures. I hope there was a lot that you did stop at, because I mean, I want to hear about it.
We did. We had a really great time when we traveled, but
I want to hear about the Queen Mary.
That's embarrassing.
Oh. Yeah, that'll be fun.
Now, see, that one I've been to, but we didn't go on the ship. We were in California, so we went to it.
Yeah, we stayed the night on the ship with friends. So we'll tell the story. But until then, you guys will just have to keep guessing what we're laughing about. But thank you everyone so much. Like, share, subscribe. We're on YouTube, Amazon Music, Google Podcast, Stitcher. Yeah.
Spotify,
YouTube.
Yep. Stop by. You can find us in any of those locations. Join us on Facebook, and so stay weird, I guess.
Okay. Ciao. I'll
stay weird. I like it.
Is that a thing? Does anybody else say it their podcast?
Probably, but we like that.
Stay weird. Ciao.